Friends, America, a superpower that always had blind faith in itself. It always believed the world bows before it. But what happens when blind faith itself becomes the greatest betrayal? Today's story is just that, a truth that will shake you. Can you imagine America's pride turning into dust? America always treated India like a puppet, a country it could control at will. But times are changing, and this time India has done something the world never even imagined. India's scientists created something the world had never seen before, an invisible shield at its borders. Not just defense, but a wall of technology so powerful that even the mightiest superpower was forced to stop. America's fighter jets, which once crossed skies without resistance, now crash the moment they approach India. This isn't just defense, it's science defeating arrogance. The rise of India's invisible wall is more than just a story of technology, it's a symbol of transformation. For decades, the world assumed that borders were physical lines drawn on maps. Walls made of concrete, guarded by soldiers, armed with missiles. But India shattered that perception by proving that the greatest defense isn't built from bricks or weapons. It's built from the mind. Imagine this: America's aircraft, which symbolized dominance for years, now crumble in seconds when they come near India's boundary. This isn't just about machinery being hacked. It's about pride being dismantled. The invisible wall represents decades of sacrifice, sleepless nights of research, and the courage of scientists who chose brains over bullets. More importantly, this wall shows the shift of power in the modern world. Nations are no longer defined by how many tanks they own or how many soldiers they can send to war. They are defined by the sharpness of their knowledge and the courage to innovate. India's wall isn't just protecting a border, it's rewriting global rules. This technology sends a loud message to every country's strength is no longer measured in fear, but in intelligence. The invisible wall is a silent roar that tells the world, respect us because we will no longer bow. And in that roar lies the real victory, the victory of knowledge over arrogance. America's greatest strength was its pride and its invincible military. But today, that pride is broken. Pilots, once fearless now, whisper prayers before takeoff. The superpower that once spread fear now trembles at India's invisible wall. For decades, America's power rested not just in its weapons, but in the image of invincibility it created. Its jets flew across the skies of nations without hesitation, and its military presence alone was enough to silence any opposition. Pride became its shield, arrogance its companion. But when pride meets reality, fear takes its place. Today, that very pride is shattered. Imagine the fear of an American pilot, once trained to believe he commands the skies, now staring at a border he dares not cross. The same hands that once gripped controls with confidence now tremble. The skies, once a symbol of freedom, have turned into a cage of uncertainty. Every mission feels like a gamble, every flight path a possible death sentence. The mighty America that once spread fear now finds itself imprisoned by fear. Its leaders can no longer inspire courage in their soldiers because the truth is undeniable. India's invisible wall has turned arrogance into weakness, and weakness breeds fear faster than any weapon ever could. This shift is not just military, it's psychological. The soldiers doubt, the citizens question, and the allies begin to whisper. When pride collapses, it drags everything with it. America's fear is proof that real power doesn't come from bombs or machines, but from the belief that you are untouchable. And once that belief is destroyed, even the strongest superpower bends. So, the question remains, can a nation survive when its greatest strength, its pride, has turned into its greatest weakness: fear. On one side, blind pride. On the other, faith and knowledge. History proves that knowledge always wins. Throughout history, arrogance has always been the downfall of empires. Rome believed its power eternal, Britain thought its empire would never fade, and the Soviets trusted their dominance blindly. But arrogance has one fatal flaw: it blinds. It convinces nations that they are untouchable, while quietly others build with patience, faith, and knowledge. America's story today mirrors this truth. It relied on its military might, its nuclear arsenal, and its image of being the world's protector. But India chose a different path: not arrogance, but faith in its scientists and in the silent power of knowledge. The result: a border so powerful that America's arrogance crumbled before it. Knowledge is not loud. It doesn't march with drums or roar with jets. It works silently, building strength in the shadows until one day its impact shakes the world. That is exactly what India's invisible wall represents. Decades of silent dedication overtaking decades of blind pride. The real question is, what lasts longer? A weapon forged in arrogance or an innovation born of knowledge? History answers it clearly. Knowledge always wins. It builds not only power, but also resilience, because it is rooted in sacrifice, patience, and vision. Today, India proves that knowledge is the sharpest sword, and arrogance is nothing more than a fragile shield. America's downfall is not just military, it is intellectual. And that is why the world watches in awe, realizing once again that no matter how mighty an empire becomes, it can never outlast the strength of the human mind. Inside America's offices, generals panic, politicians argue, and scientists fail. The crown of superpower is slipping. Power is not lost in a single day, it crumbles slowly, crack by crack. Inside America's walls of leadership, those cracks are now impossible to hide. In military rooms, generals slam their fists in frustration. They cannot explain why their most advanced jets collapse before reaching India. Politicians sit around tables blaming one another as fear grows among their citizens. Scientists, once the pride of the nation, are forced to admit failure after failure. The cracks in America's crown are not just technical, they are psychological. Every failed attempt to counter India's shield deepens doubt. Every jet that falls multiplies the humiliation. And when doubt enters the heart of leadership, the crown of power begins to slip. America once ruled the world not just because of its weapons, but because of the image of invincibility it carried. The crown was not gold, but belief. Belief that no one could challenge it. Now, that belief is broken. Other nations watch as America's leaders argue instead of act, fail instead of innovate. And the more they fail, the wider the cracks grow. History reminds us, when an empire loses unity, it loses power. America's internal panic is the beginning of that disunity. While India stands united in the silent strength of its scientists, America crumbles under the weight of its arrogance and its inability to adapt. The crown of superpower is slipping, and no matter how tightly they try to hold it, the cracks cannot be undone. Other nations are watching. Allies hesitate, enemies celebrate. The balance of power is shifting, and America's illusion of invincibility collapses. Power is never lost in isolation, it changes the world. The fall of America's invincibility is being watched by every nation on Earth. Allies who once stood firm behind the United States now hesitate. They question, can we trust a leader who cannot even protect its own skies? Partners who once pledged loyalty now wonder if that loyalty is worth the risk. And enemies, they celebrate, smiling as the once feared giant trembles. The shift of global power is not just political, it is psychological. For decades, America's strength was rooted in perception. The perception that it could not be defeated. But perception is fragile. The moment the world sees cracks in the giant's armor, the fear vanishes. And without fear, the empire loses its grip. India's victory at its borders is not just about one nation standing tall. It is about the entire global balance shifting. Countries that once bowed to America now raise their heads with courage. They whisper to themselves, "If America can fall, then we can rise." That whisper is spreading into a roar. This is how history always changes silently in moments when one empire stumbles and another rises. America's collapse of confidence is not just its loss, it is an opportunity for others to step forward. And India, with its shield of science, is not just protecting itself, it is shaping the future of power. The balance of the world is tilting, and this time it tilts towards knowledge, not arrogance. India, once dismissed as a follower, now walks as a leader. Its scientists are warriors, its labs are battlefields. For decades, India was underestimated. It was mocked as a follower, dismissed as a developing nation, seen only as a market, never as a leader. But what the world forgot is that true power is not in appearances, it is in preparation. And while America basked in arrogance, India prepared in silence. India's scientists are no less than warriors. Their weapons are not rifles but codes. Their battlefields are not deserts but laboratories. Every time an American jet falls, it is not just a military defeat. It is proof that India's silent warriors are rewriting history. And with this rise comes a new kind of respect. India no longer demands acknowledgement, it commands it. Not through fear, but through strength of mind. It walks as a leader, showing the world that superpowers are not born from arrogance, but from resilience and innovation. This is India's true rise, not of armies, but of intellect. Not of domination, but of respect. And in this rise, the world begins to see the birth of a new kind of superpower, one built on knowledge, not conquest. Wars of tomorrow won't be fought with bullets, but with brains. Science, not weapons, will decide the future of empires. The battlefield of the future is not a desert filled with tanks or oceans filled with warships. It is a laboratory, a computer, a satellite orbiting quietly above the Earth. The new definition of war is not about how much land you can conquer, but how much knowledge you can create. India's invisible wall proves this truth. Without firing a single bullet, it has brought America's mightiest weapons to their knees. It has shown that the sharpest sword is not steel, but science. The future will not be decided by the number of soldiers you can send into war, but by the number of scientists you can send into research. For centuries, wars destroyed lives, lands, and legacies. But in this new era, the greatest battles will be silent. They will be fought in codes, algorithms, innovations, and discoveries. The winners will not be those with the most weapons, but those with the strongest minds. India has stepped into this future first. It has declared to the world, we will not fight with destruction. We will fight with creation. And that declaration has shaken every empire built on arrogance. The new definition of war is clear: brains over bullets, science over steel. And in this world, India has already proven it holds the greatest weapon of all knowledge. Friends, this story isn't just about India and America. It's about the truth of human history. Arrogance blinds, but knowledge opens eyes. America's pride led it to the edge, and India's vision pushed it over. The future belongs not to the arrogant, but to the intelligent. The question is, whose side would you choose? Pride or knowledge?